Hi, everybody, and welcome to Hot Off the Press, the program where authors tell you all about their new releases. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott. And we'll start by having the panelists go around and tell us a bit about what they write and how the books they're here to discuss this evening fit in with that. Diane, would you like to start?
Sure. I have 6 series. I write funny mysteries. My first 3 series are a little sassy. There is a little bit of sensuality, a little bit of language in them, a la Janet Ivanovich, Stephanie Plum. The first series that's like that, it was my very first series ever, my Death and Taxes series. And it stars a female IRS agent who is going after white-collar criminals. And I wrote that because I used to do tax work and I came across white-collar criminals all the time and accidentally worked for some a couple times. So I had lots of fodder for those novels. And then my next series is my Paw Enforcement series, and it features a female police officer who works with a female canine, and that's set in Fort Worth, Texas. And then my third sassy series is my Busted series, and those are all along the same theme. It's all a busty female motorcycle cop, but it's a different female motorcycle cop in every book. And then I have 3 cozy mystery series, so less sensuality, less naughty words, a little more clean, but still funny and fun. And the first of those is my House Flipper series, and that stars a carpenter named Whitney Whitaker who flips houses with her cousin Buck. And my next cozy series is my Southern Homebrew Moonshine series that just launched last year. And that's the book I'm going to be talking about today is book number 2 in the series. It comes out June 7th. And then I also launched last year. I had 2 launches of new series last year, which was really fun, but a Mountain Lodge mystery series. And that's set in Beach Mountain, North Carolina, where we actually own a vacation home up there, an old cabin. But I just love it up there. So I decided it'd be fun to set a series there. And the book, I think I mentioned the book I'm going to be talking about tonight is The Proof is in the Poison, which is book number 2 in my Moonshine series.
Okay, Jenny?
I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Key Cat series for Doll Books, which is science fiction with a lot of action, romance, and humor in it. But I also write under a variety of other pen names and in every length and genre because it's a controlled form of schizophrenia and I make it work for me. I write a lot of short stories and in a lot of anthologies, therefore, and what I'm going to be talking tonight is something I wrote as Anita Ensall, which is in the Reinvented Heart anthology, which is futuristic science fiction, taking, what will love look like in the future. And my story for that is set in my Belchers universe, which I'll talk more about later.
Okay. Layla?
Hi, I'm Layla Dorine. I write a little bit of everything, LGBTQ and MM romance. I have some rocker boys, some biker boys, a lot of contemporary wanderer characters, and some snake shapeshifters, some wolf shapeshifters. And as of a couple days ago, I started writing my first lion shifter. So it's been interesting so far. I've just been part of an anthology with TL. We did a series of books. I have one today on my proof. I sold out at the conference I was just at, so I don't even have another physical copy, but we did the All-American Boys MM series set in Stony Brook, Maine, and that's really the book that I'll be talking about tonight.
Okay, TL.
I'm TL Travis. I write mostly gay romance, rock stars. I have some female. I have my Social Center series, which is 5 books, gay romance, bisexual romance, which led into the Maiden Voyage series. Social Centers is mostly north of Seattle, whereas Maiden Voyage is mostly here in Arizona, where I'm at. And that's branched into the Embrace of Fear series, which are in Las Vegas. I have a few standalones, which is the one I'm here to talk about today, which is Heat. It's part of the ABCs of Love series that's coming out, and Heat comes out next week. It's a contemporary MM small town, gay for you demisexual romance that lacks the angst that my rock stars usually have. It's just kind of a fun and lighthearted book that evidently my brain needed to write. And like I said, it comes out next week. That's it.
Okay, well, how about each of you telling us a little bit more about what your new book is about? If it's part of a series, where does it fit into the series? How does it advance the series arc? And if it's a standalone, why did you decide to do it as a standalone instead of as part of a series? Gini, on your last answer, I had a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Oh, sorry.
That's much better. Thank you.
Oh, you mean projecting from my diaphragm is actually necessary?
Well, the old theater thing, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you'll start us off, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay. So my most recent release, and unlike everybody else, I don't have a cover because thank you, supply chain. The physical books are not here yet, but the ebook is available, and that's the anthology, The Reinvented Detective. And my story in that is Go Where the Heart Takes You, which is part of my Belters universe. My Belters universe is made up of a series of short stories that I'm collecting and will be available in a collection, you know, when I need to write probably 2 or 3 more stories to fill it out. And Go Where the Heart Takes You follows a polyamorous couple who are on one last big adventure going into the asteroid belt. The conceit on the series is that we've been in the asteroid belt for centuries now. That's where we've expanded in our own solar system. And they're going there for one last adventure and end up at the Belt Jamboree, where they change a lot of people's lives for the better and one's for the worse. It fits in, all the Belcher stories are in, currently are in anthologies. I have one in Gunfight on Europa Station and another in Derelict, both anthologies that came out earlier this year. And they're loosely connected. You don't have to know anything about the belt to have read any of them, but they actually come from one of my first short story sales, which was Wanted in Love and Rockets from Daw. And it was probably, I think it was my second short story professional sale. And I loved the characters I created in that. Wanted is definitely science fiction romance. And I wanted to go back to that universe, but I didn't want to have to write science fiction romance for everything. So one of the things I'm doing in all of these very short stories is I get to take a different aspect, a different genre, and write a short story that interconnects them. So that's what I'm doing, and that we have no idea when the physical books are coming. The ebooks are available right now, so you can race out and get them. It's a really interesting, fun, eclectic collection. And one day, they tell us, physical books will be in our hands.
Layla?
Well, the book that I'm got here today is Devin's Boys, and it's part of the All American Boys romance series. And really, I didn't set out to write what this ended up being. I was joking with TL that I accidentally wrote my first harem book and never even intended to. A few years back, we did a Road to Rocktoberfest series, and I really enjoy writing my rocker boys. So when the opportunity came to do this, I was like, oh, okay, I've got to do like the small town musicians. Our story's set in Stony Brook, Maine, and I'm actually from New England. I went to college in Vermont and went to high school in Massachusetts, and I love Maine. So I'm like, okay, there's always those small town boys that want to break out and go somewhere. I thought they'd be a great subject. And then I thought, well, what about the one who made it and then came back? And somehow all of these guys end up meeting one another during this Tall Ship Festival and bonding over their music and wanting to be one of the bands to play at the festival. And as the story goes on, it kind of ended up blending past and present and giving even maybe a future for these guys. So it does end up being an MMMM romance.
Does that make it a
It does make it a
TL?
With the ABCs of Love, I was actually approached by 2 of the ladies heading up the series. What is it? It's a series of 26 standalone books. Each author was given 1 letter of the alphabet, and your title had to start with that letter and be 1 word. 24 of the 26 authors are MF, only 2 of us are MM. So I thought it would be a great way, hopefully, to expand my reader base. And the story I came up with is about a small town blacksmith. And, you know, that's all he's ever known. He's 30, turning 30 years old, never dated, never did anything, just told away as his family before him did, you know. And all of a sudden he's the first one to think, all right, well, I need to get it out there on that World Wide Web or I'm never going to get anywhere. So he puts an ad in the local place where they put all the ads up in the post office. And along comes the town klutz saying, hey, I can build you a website. I can do this. And he says, hey, aren't you that guy that runs around breaking everything? And basically shuts the door on him and sends them away. Well, a little while later, he feels bad because he knows his father wouldn't have appreciated him treating anybody that way. And he apologizes and gives him a chance. And they, you know, over time, the little klutz guy learns more about him after he helps him out. And, you know, he just never thought anything about dating or anything. And he finds out at the age of 30, he's basically demisexual and it's kind of a gay for you. You must be the one for me because you're the only one I've ever thought about in that way. So it's just kind of a small town, close proximity, falling in love out of nowhere type of romance. Just kind of a light and fluffy, which, like I said before, I don't usually do. It's something different, but I had a lot of fun writing these two.
Diane?
So my story is The Proof is in the Poison. And you can see there's a little gray cat here. His name is Smokey. And looks kind of like TL's cat that was just. So the first book in my Moonshine series is technically called the Southern Homebrew series. And the first book was called The Moonshine Shack Murder. And the Moonshine Shack is the shop that the main character, Hattie Hayes, establishes in the first book. And she uses her old family recipe for moonshine. It's the recipe that got her great grandfather arrested back during Prohibition. It's been passed down. Her grandfather, that she just calls Granddaddy, that hangs out at the shop with her, is the one that taught her how to make moonshine. And so in the first book, you know, it starts out with her first bottle coming off the conveyor belt, and she's so excited, and she's just getting her shop kind of up and running in that book. And of course, someone gets murdered with one of her mason jars, and she's implicated and all that. So the first book is basically just getting the shop off the ground. And you meet her friend. She's got a friend, Kiki, who did a study abroad in London and came back, you know, kind of a punk rocker. And then she has another friend who's in a very different situation, married and having her first baby. So they're kind of at that age, you know, 30-ish, where they're all their lives are diverging a little bit, but they're still very close friends. And so in the second book, The Proof is in the Poison, which I don't have the copies yet. It comes out June 7th. I should get my copies pretty soon, but this, I don't know how well you can see this, but there's a little model train in there. So in this book, she's moving her life along and her business along by kind of expanding outside her shop and marketing her moonshine at a model train convention. The series is set in Chattanooga, so I figured that's a perfect place to have the Chattanooga Choo Choo model train convention. And of course, someone there dies, and it turns out they were poisoned. So, and her moonshine's implicated. So she has to prove that her moonshine was not involved in the murder. And there's also a love interest. I love writing romance and adding some of that to every story. And in the first book, you meet the mounted police officer. He's on a horse. His name is Marlin. His horse's name is Charlotte. And things kind of heat up a little more in the second book between Hattie and Marlin. So that was fun to write too.
Okay. Well, now you've all got different settings for these books. I mean, there seem to be some similarities, but they're all different. And I'm always interested in what led people to choose a particular setting for a particular book or series. Layla, how did you said you love Maine, but how did you come to love Maine, and why did you decide a small town as opposed to Bangor, someplace like that?
Well, it was actually decided for us. Everybody's story took place in Stony Brook, Maine. It's a fictional place. But what really got me to like jump on board when it was offered that I could take part was I have friends in Maine. I go out there and stay with them for like a month each year when I can. I just love being down on the beach, going out to the different state parks. I live in a small town. It's just a Midwest small town. So I miss my ocean. I miss my mountains that I could always, spend time in growing up. I went to high school in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which is right on the water. So writing this book, like I got to use the lobster rolls and I got to use that time on the beach and kind of all those things that I was missing and that I don't get here in the Midwest just had me jumping all over the chance to take part in this. And it was so much fun to look at the small town and the fact that I was a small town musician. I played in a, little heavy metal band back in the 90s with friends of mine in school where we would go to our music lesson on a Saturday and one person would get paid lessons and they would come back and they'd work with everybody else on what they'd learned. And then your band just kind of grew that way. And so everything about the setting and what was set up for this shared world appealed to me. And as soon as the chance came, I was like, oh yeah, I am so there.
TL, was the small town setting part of the alphabet series, or did you choose that? And if so, why did you choose it?
I chose it. Literally the only thing they chose for us was that it had to be a letter of the alphabet, which was kind of cool. It left the parameters wide open. And for some reason, it just came to me. Actually, the town Klutz came to me, and then the blacksmith came to me. And then I saw this picture, this photo that I had to have, and the story went from there, which I love. I love that when a photo pulls the story from you. And I wasn't going to give it a state. It's set in a fictional city called Alabaster Falls. And my editor insisted that I add a state. So we just put it in Alabama. It's just a small southern town, and I started dictating it. I'm originally from Virginia, although I'm in Arizona now. And the more I dictated, the more that Virginia accent came out. So I had to stop dictating because I've got a few things in there that a lot of people are going to shake their head at and go, what does it mean when you tell a boy he's one skeeter short of a blood donation? Like, well, they're going to have to figure it out. So it's got a lot of southern twang and a lot of, just small town comments and what have you in there. And I don't know what it was, but I just had a blast with these two. And they're nothing that's going to sit there and make you, oh my God, what's going to happen next? It's more like you're going to sit there and go, this is fun. I needed something light today. I had a really crappy day today. So this made it for a fun evening,
Okay. Diane, yours is a small town also, right? It's
Chattanooga, so kind of a smaller city. How I chose that was in 2014. The company my husband had worked for 14 years decided to close their entire research division. So he was out of work for 6 months and finally got a job in Nashville. So we had never been to Tennessee, didn't know anything about it. Next thing we know, we're moving to Nashville. So we moved to Nashville, ended up just loving really all of Tennessee. Nashville was a great place to live. We would vacation in Gatlinburg in East Tennessee, and it was just beautiful up in the Smoky Mountains. And we took one vacation to Chattanooga when our kids were in college at the time when they came home. And we stayed in the Chattanooga Choo Choo Hotel, where they actually have converted passenger cars that they've converted into hotel rooms. And it was just fun. And they had a model train display in there. And it was just such a neat city. The Tennessee River runs through it, which is a big, wide river, almost like the Mississippi. So it's very much a part of the town. And then you have, the Smoky foothills around there. And then there's a huge rock formation. Rock City is a big tourist attraction there. There's a waterfall inside a mountain called Ruby Falls. So there's just all this like natural beauty there. And then there's a whole lot of Civil War history too. There was a Battle of Lookout Mountain there. So it's just a real neat city in so many different ways. And I just thought it would be fun, Moonshine, you think of Appalachia with Moonshine, and I thought I would love to set that in Chattanooga because that just seems like the perfect place for that. So it kind of just came together real organically.
Yeah, you did say Chattanooga, and for some reason my brain flipped back to a town we were talking about before we started recording.
Oh.
So sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Gini, you went much farther afield than everybody else. How did you end up using this setting for this series?
Well, like I said, I got an opportunity to be in a science fiction romance anthology, which of course, therefore, it has to be science fiction. And no matter what I do, mysteries are my first love. Okay, so I thought, oh, that's all I'll ever do. About 75% of what I write comes out science fiction, whether I mean it to or not. So I just like, woo, embrace it. But I really love the characters from Wanted, which is my story in Love and Rockets. Again, writing as Anita Ensall. But I didn't want to, you don't need to go back and see how Cal and Evie are doing. I cared more about the world I created for them. And I just wanted to do more and more of it. And I had, out of nowhere in 2020, I had 3 anthology invitations that said, and they all would fit. I'm like, oh, I can do a ghost ship in story for Derelict, and I can do a claim jumping with pirates story for Gunfight on Europa Station, and then I can do this sweeter, more family loving story about showing how people are living in this new world for us with Go Where the Heart Takes You. So it was a really great opportunity. And then, of course, I'm not actually a natural short story writer. I'm a natural novelist. So the story I was originally writing for Gunfight on Europa Station ended up turning into a novella. And once I had that, then I was like, I'm not going to torture my editor by saying, please take this. Like, I'll write him a different story. And but then I realized, what? I can keep writing in this, whether it's going into an anthology or not. So, like I said, I'm 2 or 3 stories away from a full collection of the Belters. Actually, the origin. I have an origin story for the Belters that will be coming out in Brave New Worlds from Zombie Needs Brains, which is for another hot off the press because it's coming, I think, in July. But yeah, so it's been really fun. It's been nice to explore a world I don't get to spend a lot of time in. I have to spend most of my time in Kitty's world in the Alien series, which is great. I mean, I love her. It's why I have a career. But it is fun to be able to do something else where I don't have to be funny all the time, which is really nice. And where I get to expand on something, a world that I can see really, really clearly. And now everybody else can too. So it's been really fun. And at this point, it's like every anthology call that I'm in, I'm like, so what can I fit in for the Belters into this? Which is nice because it gives me ideas. Stories won't always fit. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, that won't, this story call will not work for that. But it hasn't a lot. And so it's been really great. I've really enjoyed it. And it's nice when you get to have something that it's invigorated all my other writing, getting to do this, because I've been wanting to do more stories in this universe for over a decade. And I finally got to.
Well, each of you has had to come up with, as all writers do, a central character, sometimes more than one central character. And those characters have an arc because they have to change during the course of the story. So what was your inspiration for these characters and their arcs? TL, would you like to start us off?
Well, I'm a pantser. My characters tell me what they are as I'm writing them. The only one, like I said, I came up first with the Klutz, and that came from me bouncing off walls and then looking later, oh, I have that bruise, where that came from. That was kind of sort of story. He didn't mean to drop that thing. He just touched it and there it went. I didn't mean to spill up a coffee. It just went. And then I thought, a grumpy side character. And I thought, well, what's grumpier than, a blacksmith, just a burly, big old blacksmith. That's all he does. I blacksmith. Don't bother me with anything else. But how's his business going to grow if just stuck in a little blacksmith hole in the wall shop? So I did him to have something. So I thought, well, all right, let's get him on the World Wide Web, he calls it. They kind of went from there, their paths to cross, became forced proximity part of the story when they were in blacksmith shop together, and Campbell's trying not to pick stuff, and Daughtry's trying not to break him.
And Diane, what about you?
So my moonshiner Hattie, she had a very stable job. She worked for the company that made moon pies. They're actually based in Chattanooga, so I kind of stole that from reality. And she decided, though, to take a chance. She loves her granddaddy. She enjoyed learning how to make moonshine with him. And I think she realized she had what it would take to run a successful business of her own, or she was willing to take that chance. And of course, she's going to have ups and downs. Things, always are harder, than you expect them to be. And she's had some of that. She's had to learn how to do marketing. So it's kind of about her personal growth, as a businesswoman. She even becomes a mentor to another woman who's younger than her that knows even less, so that's kind of fun. But I have a daughter who's about Hattie's age, and she works in advertising. And it's just been really interesting seeing her learn about herself, learn about her industry, learn about business, but also, the creative side of it. And I think, some of that sort of inspired me to write a character that was at that same phase of life and doing some of those similar things, figuring out what she was good at and enjoying success and learning a lot on the way, and, having the occasional setback, but you learn from that too. So our character arc is kind of, hopefully by the end of the series, she'll be fully self-actualized as a moonshiner and know a lot about how to run her business the right way and maybe not make so many mistakes.
Jenny?
Normally, I don't actually have to do what I had to do for this one. The call for anthologies tends, they give you a parameter, you get a title, and you get a parameter of what they're looking for, and usually I can figure out something to fit in. And I could not come up with anything for the reinvented heart. I was just sitting there going, I don't even know what I'm going to do. So I asked the editors, what did they want to see? Because I enjoy editorial direction very much, honestly. It really saves a lot. So much pain is saved. And they came back with something I was honestly completely unprepared for. We'd like to see two little lady lesbians in space and how they're doing. Like, oh, wow. Isn't that different? I was not prepared for this. But I thought about it, and I thought it's a really great way for me to expand the Belters universe, because my characters are not belt miners. They are you'll find it's a short story, so it's just hard not to give away spoilers, but they have a lot going for them that you don't realize until the end. But they're adventurous. They've been in a giant polymarriage, like 8 people, and but these 2 were the original core. And they have like 17 children and 1 million grandchildren and everything else. And they're at a point in their lives where nobody needs them anymore. And they want to have one last big adventure, and that's they've bought a spaceship and they're going out to the belt. And their eldest son is, speaking for all the children. We are worried, Mom, Mother, what are you doing? Right? And all this stuff. And so they end up there. And one of the fun things about the Belters universe is that, of course, it's set probably really 1,000 years from here, centuries ahead of where we are right now. And so your language changes. So the slang is very fun to do. And so in this story, they have a Belter's handbook and a Belter's slang that they take with them so that they can sound accurate. And it was very fun to do, and have them run into a family in need and a man their age who has always been alone, and how those 3 different groups collide and combine. And it's a very sweet, fun story. It's the bad guy will absolutely get his comeuppance, and everything else is going to work out really nicely. And it was nice to write. It was fun to write, and I was grateful for the editorial direction, because I just didn't have an idea of what they wanted. And once they told me, then I could turn that into something that would be fun and interesting. And I really think 1,000 years from now, polymarriage is just going to be like, of course, right? How do they ever manage, right, with just 2? The extrapolation for what it's going to be like is part of the joy of writing it. And like I said, yay, editorial direction.
Layla, how about you?
Well, I kind of started with the fear, anytime you have to get up on stage, there's that stage fright element. And so Moon and Mikhail are these young guys. They've grown up in Stony Brook. They've played music, but now they're really starting to play in front of people. And since I'm kind of a pantser like TL, as I start writing, I'm thinking, oh, this is your classic stage fright. And, it's all about the nerves. But the more I kept writing and diving into, he knows that he's good and he knows that he can play. So what is going on that he's so scared that he's running off stage and he's not playing? And then as I started writing, I'm like, oh, there's kind of an underside to this town. There's a seedier side to Stony Brook. It's not all lobster rolls and maple ice cream and tall ship festivals. Like there's other things going on here. And I was able to kind of tie it in with not only Moon's backstory and what's going on with him currently where he doesn't want to play, but you've got Devin, who has been out in the world. He's a rock star. His band has exploded and he's come home. He's kind of licking his wounds, but hey, he's done his thing, so he's retired. Except here these young guys kind of land on his door and they bring their chaos into his life. And in doing that, they kind of take him backwards to his own past, and kind of that dark past and the current situation going on just weave together. And it was just so much fun to do. And it's the shortest thing I have ever done. Like I am so proud of the fact that they said 40K and I came in at 41. It's like, I will take that as a win. I will start a book, and TL's laughing because she knows that usually I can't write anything under like 60K. Usually I'm creeping towards like 90, 110. And this time they were like 40K. And my first thought was, what have I gotten myself into? Especially as these mysteries start kind of coming together with past and future. But it was so much fun getting it all to come together by the end of the book.
Well, I'm just wondering, listening to you all talk, if you had to do any research for these series, and if so, what kind of research was it? And if there was anything that was particularly challenging or particularly rewarding, how about share that with us? Diane, will you start?
So for this particular book, The Proof is in the Poison, I had to do a lot of research on poison, specifically with methanol, because that is if you hear about bad moonshine and people going blind and dying, that is the stuff that kills them is, if it's bad moonshine, homemade moonshine. So I had to learn a lot about that, some of which was very disturbing. There was a lot, some sad stories of things that happened to people. But I learned a lot about that. And I learned oddly that the way they treat methanol poisoning is by giving them ethanol. So you're counteracting one alcohol with another alcohol, which I thought that was kind of fascinating. And then I also did a lot of research on model train contests at conventions, like how are these model train things built? How are they judged? And I learned a lot about that. And I actually bought a model train while I was writing the book because it was like, this is so fun. I want to get a little set. So I ordered a little set at Christmas and we had it going around. But yeah, so I learned there's a difference between what they call kit built, which is if you buy something that's a kit that you were going to build for your model. And then there's scratch built, which means you built it totally from scratch. And they will judge those differently, because more creativity and efforts involved in the scratch built. And then just the different categories they have. They have one called it's a photo contest. I forget what the exact name of it is, but photos that involve railroads. And I used the last spike photo in the book that someone did a model that looked like that. And then they have, steam train, diesel train, and they even have a humor category, which I loved because I like to write funny stuff. So that was fun coming up with a contestant that had a humorous model train in there. So yeah, very odd research going from the kind of the dark poisoning with the methanol to the model trains, but it was fun.
Okay, Gini, how about you?
Well, the fun of science fiction is that you're doing a lot of research. So I do have to do a lot of this for the Alien series anyway, but I know a lot more about astrophysics than you would think. And I had to really, for the Belchers, I have to research the solar system constantly because I need to make sure that, I'm using the right moons and how do you do this and, what's the warp drive and all this stuff, and then not actually write it that way. So I know a lot more about astrophysics in our solar system than is ever going to actually show up in the story, because then I'm capable of, but do not want to write hard science fiction. I like soft, fun, fluffy science fiction where all I say it's a spatio-temporal warp looking through black hole technology and we're done, right? So I can't be quite that facile with the Belchers because they're really in the belt. They're mining, they're doing all these things. So you have to look at those different things. How are the space stations set up? The various space stations, the big rocks that have names, how have they been done? What would you do if you were actually going out there? So lots and lots of research on the solar system for this, and then a variety of do you have to turn for the gravity? Can I fake a grav generator and things like that? So yeah, the stories are way more fun than the research, but the research is necessary.
Okay, Layla.
Really, for this, there wasn't so much research as I just immersed myself in some true crime documentaries and things to get into the underground of the town. And there was this one documentary, it kept coming up on Netflix and some other things, about this guy who was pretty much killed on the main street of the town because he was like the town bully and he was in the racketeering and all this things. And I'm like, see, that's the kind of person I was looking for like the backstory for the dark side of town. So I started reading more on that case and watching more documentaries on it, and was like weaving bits of like that kind of backstory into the book. So you had this, family in the town that's on the second generation, and one has kind of muscled his way in on a lot of the town's businesses, and the other one is sort of creative, but he's lazy, so he more wants to muscle in on getting into a band with these guys he knows is really good, so they'll carry him forward. And he's kind of putting pressure on them to try to make that happen. So that was about all the research I did.
Okay, TL.
Oh, mine, it helped that I have a minor, not so minor obsession with Forged in Fire. So that made this fun for me. I love that show. And I just dove a bit more into the technical terms for the different materials that they use, not just the anvil. Obviously I knew an anvil, but with the different the gloves and the different forks and what they use them for, and then the patterns that the different metals melded together make, called a Damascus. So I just researched a little bit more of my obsession, and I've been to a lot of small towns. I traveled a lot in a past life with the job that I had, and I had to do store visits in rural towns. So I was a bit more familiar with at least their setting. Most of the stories that I wrote are written in places I've been, which is kind of all but 13 states. So that helps a lot, and I just kind of draw from that. But outside of that, there wasn't much more research done, because what Campbell does with regards to building websites and different things online is also something I do. So his portion of the story was a little bit easier to write.
Okay. Well, it sounds like all of your books have a supporting cast. So if you would pick one person, two at the most, that you think that you particularly enjoyed creating for the supporting cast, and tell us about those characters or that character, that would be great. Gini, will you start?
Yes. Okay. So for this story, for Go Where the Heart Takes You, Cecilia is a very precocious little girl, and she is the catalyst that causes the three different groups to come together because she's being taken in by a con man, and she has taken the family's cash fob and lost it all to this guy, which is stranding her family of basically adopted Belt children. We have a family, the Wardens, that started adopting Belt kids who were orphaned, and their eldest daughter, their only actual birth daughter, is trying to continue the family tradition, and it's very hard. She is the eldest. Their parents have passed away. The older brothers and sisters are off now, and they're doing the same thing. So it's not like they can help because they already have their own flock. And so Cecilia doing this is, you can't be angry at her though, because she's just adorable. And her older sister is saying to, yes, when my father told me, I was shocked when my father told me Cecilia did not mean finds trouble naturally, but is normally adorable enough to get out of it unscathed. So Cecilia was a lot of fun.
Layla, how about your supporting cast?
Moon's entire family. I have never had so much fun writing three characters, and they really only appear a couple times, but they're this wacky, just grandmother and her two kids who are all three pretty much hippies. The one was a roadie with our other main character who's just come back to town, and he's kind of part of who sends them on their little collision course. But just getting these characters around a table, and they're cooking and they're talking and they're kind of picking on each other, and they're picking on Moon, and just such lighthearted and fun, where Moon is trying to conceal all this stuff, and his family is just like poking each little answer out of him, but making him laugh about it at the same time. So just the whole family vibe, and the one scene where they were at the table was just so much fun.
Hey, TL, what about your supporting cast?
It's the whole town, because both of their families are gone. And the town is far too heavily involved with trying to marry Daughtry off. So every time he turns a corner, they're trying to make him meet somebody new, all the way down to the poor girl who can't put lipstick on without smearing it across her teeth, and everybody's looking at her going, trying to get her to wipe it off. The neighbor chickens, I would say, come around the most, because for some reason they like to keep getting out and going across Daughtry's property, but they're a little bit vicious to Campbell, so he's trying to hold them off with a squirt bottle. Didn't go well. So really, yeah, it's just the town in the background being the nosy population of 1,200.
I grew up in a town that had a population of 1,200. So, Diane, what about your cast?
I would say one of my favorites is Hattie's best friend, Kiki. She's the punk rocker that I mentioned earlier. She is a graphic artist, and she just puts stuff out there. There's no pussyfooting around. There's no, she's not mean. She's just blunt, and so that's fun, because she just, she's kind of a real cut the crap kind of person. So, Hattie's always kind of trying to be nice and professional, and Kiki will just say stuff. So I like that. So there's a lot of comedy that comes from that. And then it's funny, because TL mentioned the chickens, the cat. I just love the cat in there. He's her little charmer, Smokey, and charming in his own way, because he's actually kind of a standoffish, aloof cat. But when he really does care about her. But he's just fun. And then also the mounted police officer, his horse Charlotte. It was really fun writing a horse in the story. I've done that one other time where I had a mounted sheriff, and it's just kind of fun having secondary characters that are not human. What they can add to the story, something a little different, and they can even kind of give funny looks and things like that. And sometimes they notice things that are going on that maybe the humans don't. So that's always kind of fun to throw an animal in there.
Okay, well, shifting gears for a minute, what was the biggest challenge about writing this particular story? Layla, will you start?
Really, I think it was making sure that I could tell the story that I wanted to tell in that 40K. And there were moments where I was like, oh man, like, am I trying to do too much and go too many places? But the characters were throwing the story out there, and I was just doing my job trying to write it, transcribe it down. And I guess I got to a point where I thought, okay, if this goes seriously over and I can't cut it, I'm just going to put it aside, save it for something else, and start working on, a backup story, because 40K was just really hard to get with everything I wanted to do with the book.
Okay, TL.
Well, for me, since the majority of my books are rock stars, and I did get my one wheel spin, the F word is used in many different forms and fashions as nouns, verbs, you name it. Well, in this story, Campbell does not curse. And anybody who knows me knows my rock stars talk just like I do. So Campbell has a curse jar. If he even says, dang it, he gets mad and he puts $1 in the curse jar. Well, Daughtry's a blacksmith, so, his language isn't exactly clean. I am proud of myself. There's not one F word in the story. But Campbell's jar was overflowing thanks to Daughtry at one point. So for me, it was a challenge, not just using that as an action word or a noun in some cases. I find very interesting forms to use the F word in, and not having it at all was the biggest challenge. Although I did surprise myself with certain scenes that flew naturally without it. It was just like, oh, I can do this.
Diane?
I think in this case, since Hattie is going to this convention basically as a vendor, she's not necessarily part of the model train crowd. It was hard to find ways to sort of insinuate her into their lives and to get information. I had to really kind of figure out ways that she could interact with these people, naturally, where it wouldn't seem like she's forcing her way in, and ways for her to sleuth. It was a little more difficult because it wasn't something she was kind of an outsider there. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but I managed to do it. So thank goodness.
Okay, Jenny?
Well, I'm going to echo Layla, making it short enough. I thought that was, by the way, it's so cute. You're like, my novels are normally 60,000 words. I'm headed for 240,000 words on Aliens Like Us, which is the book that's late. And that isn't going to be when I write the end. I figure at 250 easy. Thank God Daw likes thick books. Okay, they're becoming doorstops. I can't help it. I have a cast of hundreds literally by now. So I like the challenge of writing something in less than 1 billion words. And so it's always hard to do, but I like doing it, and I do it a lot. So the other challenge, though, is you still have to have a complete story. You must have a beginning, a middle, and a satisfactory conclusion. And I'm like, I've got the last two of a poly marriage going out. What in the world are they going to actually do? I have the characters, but what are they going to do besides travel, right? And so that's why I had them go to the Jamboree, because that gave them a way to meet a lot of different people. And then it occurred to me that if I have one group in need and somebody who is bravely trying to protect, that they can spot and help, then that's your crux, saving these kids, and then what happens afterwards. So that the hardest part was finding the mechanism to have it be a story versus a vignette. So, managed.
And what was the single most fun thing about writing this book? TL?
The Southern euphemisms coming back in. I didn't realize I remembered as many as I did till I started writing. I love the Southern hospitality, the honeys and the darlings, and how you doing today, sweetie, and just the little off the wall things that make you go, I think I know what that meant. I'm not positive. I just had fun with these two, and it's been a while since I've been able to say that, you know.
There was a column in the New York Times years and years ago in the book section on how useful the saying "all y'all" is, and how, you know, people, it's just a Southern thing.
Yep.
So Diane, what was the most fun for you?
It was just thinking about the train models, which probably sounds so goofy and hokey, but it was just fun to mentally in my mind, you know, come up with ideas for these train setups. And that's why I ended up ordering the train, because I thought this is kind of fun. It's like getting to play, you know, kind of with dolls or something again. And I think that's part of why what we love about writing is we like creating these environments and settings in our heads. And this was like a setting within a setting. So it was kind of fun to have that extra layer to do that and to play around with.
Okay. Jenny?
Apologies for the cat yowling and breathing that you're going to hear in the background. They are done and want mommy cat to pay attention to them. Well, two things. One, like I said earlier, I really like creating the belt slang. It's a lot of fun, you know, and figuring out what do I want to say, how do I want to say it, and, you know, and having it be clear enough that somebody doesn't have to, oh, well, that means, you know, explanation. So that's fun. And then I really liked it when everything meshed. But I also got to slip in, you know, as I said, this is a series, but my editors don't necessarily know it because each story stands alone, right? So I'm not like, this is the next in my Belter series. I'm just like, here's your story. So I slipped in a reference to some characters that are in a different story for the Sadie Sally group in Derelict. They're in there, and if you've read the stories, you'll go, oh, that's those guys. So little Easter eggs that were really just for me, but I enjoyed it. So.
Layla?
It was pulling out all the photo albums and going back over my last couple trips to Maine and growing up in Massachusetts and pulling out some photos of my old band and just looking at some images from back when we used to sit on the beach with the bonfire and just play, and just laid out all those pictures. And as I was working on the book, I was looking at those images and trying to help the reader kind of see what I could see in those pictures. And it was just so much fun remembering and revisiting and going, man, I wonder what so-and-so is doing today, or going, man, my lead singer is still playing music. So that was really the best part. It's just all the memories.
Well, we're actually coming up on time. So let's go around, and if you'll each tell us again the title of the book and when it'll be out, as well as where people can find you on social media, that would be great. Diane, will you start?
Sure. So my book is The Proof is in the Poison, and it's Southern Homebrew book number 2. You can find me online at dianekelly.com, and it's spelled DianeKelly.com. Pretty much the easiest way you can spell Diane, easiest way you can spell Kelly. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Diane Kelly Books, and Facebook. I have an author Diane Kelly Facebook page.
Okay. Jenny?
GiniKoch.com is my website. I'm on Facebook, and I have two, maybe 3 author pages. I can't remember anymore. I'm also on Twitter and Pinterest. I'm not on Instagram. Please stop sending me messages. I'm not seeing them. And the book is the anthology, The Reinvented Heart. Ebook is out right now. Physical book coming sometime in the nearest future. And I'll be at a variety of cons this year, and I hope to see people there. People in person, I guess.
Layla?
My book is Devin's Boys. The cover is actually by Dan Skinner. It's always been so much fun working with him with covers. And this is part of the All-American Boy Romance series. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook. I've got a Wix website. I've got a blog called Rainbow Lyrics and Mellow Mushrooms, and I put all kinds of new content and fun things that I'm working on there. I know there's an Instagram somewhere that I pop into and a Tumblr. Really, I'm trying to get better at social media, and the only reason I have so many is I have a teenager. And so when I wanted to explore social media, I pretty much was like, hey, come in here and put these apps wherever you think they need to go, and I'll try to use them. And they put ones I didn't even know existed on there, but that's where you can find me pretty much all over the internet.
Okay, TL.
All right, it's Heat. It's the ABCs of Love. It comes out next week on my birthday, actually, May 26th. And you can, I have tltravis.com, has all my social media links there, or on Linktree, and I'm on all of them. TikTok, Instagram, a couple different Facebook groups, you name it, it's out there, and it's on, like I said, it's on my Linktree or on my website.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming and talking about their new books with us tonight. And thank you to everyone who has watched the panel.